My name is Michael Lawson. I am President and CEO of the Los Angeles Urban League. Thank you for attending the second of our 6-part webinar series called Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program. These Zoom workshops are brought to you through our collaboration with the Parkside Economic Development Corporation and its CEO, Gerald Smith. Thank you, Gerald, for partnering with the Los Angeles Urban League in this effort to bring wealth and health information to our community. This afternoon, we have two outstanding professionals in the field of health and wellness who will lead us through the discussion. I am elated that both Dr. Zuri Morel and Dr. Gloria Moreau are here to speak with you on the subject of wellness is health. They will be introduced formally momentarily. Gerald Smith will also introduce the other well-respected speakers who are participating in this afternoon's workshop. The noted business coach, author, and networking expert, George Fraser, said that, and I quote, "Success runs in our race," close quote. For us to achieve this success, Mr. Fraser speaks of, we must first be healthy. We must focus particularly on our diets, activities, and rest. I look forward to listening to our noted speakers' remarks. Thank you for your participation in this event and in support of our community as well. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second installment of Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program that we affectionately refer to as BWARP. Our topic this evening, as Michael Lawson told us, is wellness is wealth. As we all know, April is National Minority Health Month, a time to raise awareness about health disparities that continue to affect racial and ethnic minority populations and encourage action through health education, early detection, and control of disease complications. As always, all of you will have an opportunity during our Q&A to submit questions pertaining any of the past and upcoming events that we have. But tonight, our focus is on maintaining the physical, mental, and spiritual health needed to accomplish and enjoy your financial success. Without good health, we can't enjoy the process of building a solid financial portfolio, nor the benefit of having one. I'm Reverend Gerald Smith, CEO of Parkside Economic Development Corporation, and I'll be your moderator, I should say, for BWARP this evening. A lot of you know the great history of the Los Angeles Urban League and how over the last 100 years, they've been serving our community. So I want to thank their president and CEO, Michael Lawson, as well as their chief operating officer, Brian Williams, and their board of directors and staff for supporting this program. I also want to thank the Parkside EDC board and all of our speakers for your support and commitment to BWARP. Most importantly, we appreciate all of you for sharing your evening with us, and we trust that you'll take away a nugget of information and inspiration to assist you in attaining and retaining good health and legacy wealth for yourself, your family, and our community. You know a lot about the Urban League, I'm sure, but let me tell you just a little bit about Parkside EDC. We are a faith-based 501c3 serving Leimert Park, Crenshaw, and the surrounding communities for the past 20 years. Our mission is to lead social change by providing social programs that educate, empower, and enhance the lives of individuals and families residing in our service area. Parkside awards over 20,000 in college scholarships annually, and we're committed to providing financial literacy workshops for youth entitled The Big Five of Money that was brought to us by our friend Ed Alston. And we also have those workshops sponsored by US Bank, and we have health and wellness seminars for our students that are going to college, which are sponsored by the AIDS Health Foundation. BWARP is an expansion of our financial literacy efforts to increase the number of African-American property and business owners and plant seeds that will produce wealth that is retained within families that help sustain our community. I invite you to visit parksideedc.org to find out more about the organization and all the students that we have helped. About a year ago, Michael Lawson and I had a conversation about the effects of gentrification and how our inability to retain property and business ownership will erode our primary wealth building foundation. That dialogue surrounding that and the other conditions that impact the economic stability and growth in our community produced this what if. What if, through a collaborative effort, we provide our community with access to dialogue resources and information on the subject matters of basic financial literacy, home and business ownership retention, estate planning, wills and trusts, fiduciary representation and elder protection, tax planning and IRS representation, access to capital and asset protection, as well as individual and collaborative investing, and then providing a platform to produce millionaire millennials. With Michael's blessing, we answered that what if question. BWARP is extremely fortunate to have a group of presenters who are experts in their respective fields and longtime Parkside supporters. Before we introduce our special guest presenters for the evening on Wellness is Wealth, I want you to meet our wealth attainment and retention specialists. These individuals throughout their careers have shared their knowledge and donated their time to efforts like this to provide needed services to our community. Our upcoming workshop on June 10th, A Foundation Built on Home and Business Ownership, will feature Daryl Brown and David Murphy. Daryl Brown has over 47 years of experience in diverse leadership and management roles within the banking world. He is an outspoken advocate for identifying new markets for individuals, customers, and businesses with various financial needs. Post his retirement as Senior Vice President of the Southern California region of US Bank, Daryl remains active as an agent for change and economic parity in the underserved communities through his new platform for positive change, the Rewirement Project, that you'll hear more about in the coming weeks and months. So stay tuned. Daryl?
Thanks very much, Gerald. Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited about this evening. And more importantly, I'm really excited about the partnership that Parkside and Urban League, the Urban League has developed. That partnership is critical to the health of our community as well. 47 years in banking. I've got a lot of experience. I can't wait to share it with all of you. Tonight, you're going to hear a lot about physical wellness. You're going to hear about mental wellness. But come June, I'm going to talk to you about financial wellness, personal finance. We're going to talk about savings. We're going to talk about debt management. We're going to talk about investment. We're going to talk about owning a small business and some of the tax planning and the tax benefits associated with owning a small business. I'm really excited. I hope you guys are. So mark your calendars, make note. I've got a lot to share with you all. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Daryl is going to be partnered with David Murphy. David Murphy, EA, is CEO and principal of D.L. Murphy, Inc., with 34 years experience in tax preparation, tax accounting, tax law. David has successfully prepared taxes and represented individuals, small businesses, and tax-exempt organizations before all levels of governmental tax agencies. Additionally, his professional services include real estate and mortgage brokerage licenses. When he's not crunching numbers or solving business issues, you can find him riding his bike from LA to San Francisco and back. David?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'd like to congratulate everyone for taking the time and learning this very valuable subject matter that we're going to have today. Gerald pretty much gave you my background, my history, my credentials. We're going to be talking, when we get into the tax part with Daryl, we'll be talking about, the tax system overall, new tax laws that are out now, unusual tax situations, tax resolutions, problems, liens, levies, garnishments, payroll issues, real estate, capital gains, trust taxes when someone, which is what we're all here for. So I look forward to talking to everyone, and I would like, if we can, Jacinda, if we can take questions between now and then or tonight for that particular one, because I also want to be able to answer your questions, not just necessarily what I want you to hear about taxes. So we're open to that. So again, thank you for taking the time. And I've already heard some of the speakers today. Put your hats on, put your seatbelt on, and we're in for a good one today.
And David, I'm looking forward to partying with you, man. It's going to be fun for all those that's going to join us in June.
Yes. Looking forward to there. Okay. Thank you a lot. And who's next?
On August 11th, we'll present a unique presentation that I call I Will If You Trust Me, a deep dive into the importance of estate planning and fiduciary responsibilities that result when it's not done properly. The speakers for that program will be Caprice Collins and BJ Hawkins. Attorney Caprice Collins is a top-rated Harvard Law School graduate. She has over 40 years of legal experience with successful law practice devoted exclusively to estate, business planning, and trust administration. Attorney Collins is a well-respected keynote speaker on wills, living trust, estate planning, business planning, and trust administration. Caprice?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so delighted to be here with you and so looking forward to hearing tonight's presentation. In June, in August actually, myself and Dr. BJ Hawkins will be talking about the subject that Reverend Gerald mentioned to you. But beyond all of those things that Reverend Gerald said about me, I'm really a homegrown girl. I'm a graduate of Audubon Junior High School, Dorsey High School, UC Irvine, and I've grown up over the last so many years in the greater Los Angeles area and really have an affection for the district, the Crenshaw district, where the nonprofit is located, where the Urban League's office is located. And actually started my years in Watts and then Compton and then the Crenshaw area. So I'm a part of all of those communities, and it gives me great pride to come from them and to also to try to help people within that community. I have been practicing law now for 42 years. I do devote my practice just to estate planning. And how I do the education of my community is through webinars. So we offer frequent free webinars through our website, www.collinslawgroup.com. And through that website, you can register a webinar, attend a webinar, and also receive a free consultation with me. And in those webinars, we really focus on about how families protect the wealth they have and then how they leave it to future generations. And it's really important for us to understand that estate planning is not just about when we die. It's also about what happens to us if we become sick and become incapacitated, develop dementia, or just otherwise are unable to make financial and medical decisions. At that point, will your family end up going to court in order to be able to assist you and protect those assets? Or will you have a plan in place that prevents that from happening? I will be talking about in the seminar in August about how we can avoid court processes, how we can plan to protect ourselves and our assets, benefit our families, keep money through families, generational wealth being created. My partner in that webinar in August is a respected and experienced fiduciary who will be talking about what happens when we don't make those plans. So now I'd like to turn it back over to Reverend Gerald to introduce Dr. BJ Hawkins.
BJ Hawkins, PhD, is managing principal of One Source Fiduciary Solutions and is a California licensed professional fiduciary with trustee and conservatory court appointments. Dr. Hawkins is an expert in intergenerational transfer of wealth. BJ has dedicated her career to opening doors of financial opportunity for African Americans. As a competitive tennis player, BJ believes, just like life, tennis is a head game that relies on endurance, skill, determination, and follow through. Dr. BJ Hawkins.
Well, good afternoon, or I should say good evening to everybody. I'm really happy to be here because I believe in collaboration with ethical and well-qualified African-American professionals. And every business expert meets that definition of being ethical, well-qualified, and professional. I got into the fiduciary business, and certainly we'll discuss it in August when Attorney Collins and I give our presentations, because I was shocked at what happens, and that is to family and friends when they are not prepared, when they do not have an estate plan, or they do not have a trust. There will be two words after your participation in our presentation that I hope will be seared in your mind, and that is intestate and fiduciary. You will understand why it is important for everyone, for every Black family to understand what a California licensed professional fiduciary is, what we can do, and how we impact if you do not spend the time developing a trust. You will also understand what being or having a situation where a person makes their transition intestate, who gets to decide whether the assets that they have worked hard for are passed to the family, or someone else makes the decision about how those assets will be divided. I look forward to working with my colleague in assuring that there is an intergenerational transfer of Black wealth. And I look forward to the discussion this evening, because there is health, emotional health, mental health, financial health, and hopefully we will understand there is intergenerational health and wealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. BJ. In October, our presentation is entitled Invest Well and Live Well, and it will feature two of LA's top investment and stock market specialists, one of which is Joe Haywood. Joe Haywood is president and CEO of Haywood & Associates, a comprehensive financial planning firm. He has provided investment and insurance solutions to more than 250 clients and manages more than 75 million in assets. Joe is an alumnus of USC, a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, and his biggest job is that of a husband and father of 4. He's also executive pastor at New Visions Christian Fellowship. His passion and hobbies include golf, racquetball, and travel. Joe?
Good evening. Thank you, Gerald, for that introduction. I am excited as well to be presenting on investing well and living well. And so tonight's topic actually interacts with what we do with regards to helping clients manage and invest their money for retirement. It does no good, or the way I look at it, you could save all the money you like, but if you have poor health, guess what? You're gonna lose out. So tonight's subject's very important. But my job is really to explain investments on a layman's term. It is to help you understand how to manage money, how to invest money, not just on a personal level, but through your business. It is also, by the time we're done, we hope that you will have learned how to manage money where you can articulate it to your children, therefore creating a legacy of understanding how to invest, a legacy of understanding how to create wealth. So with that, Gerald, I thank you guys for giving me an opportunity to speak in October, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Joe. And we're going to close out our year doing something that we all need to do, which is reach back. And we're going to have a seminar about producing millionaire millennials. And that seminar will actually be facilitated by young people discussing their plans to carry on the legacies that we leave for them. Our workshops, as you can see, cover a variety of wealth building and retention strategies, but this evening's focus is on wellness. And our first Wellness is Health presenter is Dr. Zuri Morel. Zuri A. Morel, MD, is a leading Los Angeles colorectal surgeon and specialist. Dr. Morel is a board-certified colorectal and general surgeon with his own practices located in Beverly Hills and Los Alamitos, California. Dr. Morel has over 40 publications and articles and book chapters. He was the director of colorectal cancer programs at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center from 2010 through 2018. Dr. Morel specializes in colon cancer, rectal cancer, and hemorrhoids, Crohn's disease, colitis, IBD treatment, and colonoscopies. He is also an inventor and a scientist who holds a patent for an anal rectal cream he developed, anal rejuvenation. He enjoys educating patients and the community on cancer prevention through nutrition and living healthy lifestyles by giving lively, interactive, motivational, and educational seminars. He has educated audiences on television, The Doctors, the Hallmark Channel, and Home Family, Telemundo, and various public service campaigns. Find out more about Dr. Morel at lacolorectalsurgeon.com. Now you'll hear from one of LA's leading general health advocates and the head of the Physicians Task Force at Cedars-Sinai, Dr. Zuri Morel.
All righty. How's everybody doing today? And thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen with everyone. And all righty. So first of all, thank you all for having me. And, we're going to talk today about health is wealth, okay? And we're going to learn, we're hearing so much, what is wealth? What does wealth mean? Is wealth the monetary value of all possessions and assets? Is it your material prosperity? One of the definitions is, for a country, for instance, economic wealth, plentiful supplies of a particular resource. Or do you come from the mindset of Virgil? So Virgil, about 2,000 years ago, Virgil was a Roman poet, and he is quoted as saying, the greatest wealth is health. And so when I say this, and when I go and talk to people, and even here tonight, we like to say, well, you can have all the money in the world, but if you're not healthy when you get older to enjoy it, it means nothing. But what if I told you that that's actually not the whole story? People always say, well, if I'm not healthy, I can't make money, I can't get wealth. But I want to share with some interesting facts. In America, what if it's kind of flipped? What if you don't have wealth, then you don't have health? Now that's very scary. Which one is it? When you look at all the studies show that if you are wealthier in this country, you actually have a lower mortality, you actually have a higher life expectancy, slower decline of physical function, you have a decreased risk of obesity, decreased risk of smoking, decreased risk of hypertension, and a decreased risk of asthma. And so when I give these talks, I love the fact that we're also talking about monetary wealth, and that's some of the lectures you'll hear a little later, and we're talking about physical wellness and mental wellness, because it's all combined. It's actually all combined. And so what is actual physical wealth? What does that mean? So physical wellness in and of itself means being aware, taking care of your body, doing whatever kind of pleasurable physical activities you do to burn calories, eating food that's nutritious, obtaining regular medical checkups, sleeping, living tobacco-free. Now, these are some of the health killers, and I want to go through and talk to you about why these are actually health killers. I think as physicians, a lot of times we say, don't do this, do that, but we don't tell you why. Being physically inactive, okay. So being physically inactive is a health killer. Now, it's not just because of what people say, well, if you're not working out, you're not physically active, you could become more obese. Actually, being physically active can actually decrease some of the hormonal levels in your body, such as insulin, which can then decrease the chance of you having cancer. Okay, something that I do as a colorectal surgeon, people always talk about constipation. Constipation is actually highly improved by patients who are physically active. Okay, these are actually something tangible that happens in your body. in terms of the muscles contracting, in terms of endorphin release, in terms of a decrease in certain hormones that cause constipation when we work out. Now, here's my favorite stat that I love to tell people about. When you eat a diet high in fat and high in red meat, that is something that leads to cancer, obesity, and death. Now, I want to share a stat with you guys. African Americans, we have the highest rate of colorectal cancer in the world, okay? Now, guess where the two lowest rates of colorectal cancer are in the world? Uganda and Nigeria. My wife and I and my kids, we go on medical missions to Uganda. I operate there. I do about 40 surgeries in a week. My wife does, she's a cataract surgeon. She does about 42 eyes in a week. The surgery I never do when I'm there is cancer surgery. Because now, what I tell people is there's barely any difference between a Caucasian and an African-American person's genes, let alone an African-American person's genes and an African. So why is it that cancer, colorectal cancer there is so low, but our cancer rate here as a people is so high? Well, it comes from diet. That's one of the biggest contributors, you guys. So when you eat a diet that is high in red meat, okay, and red meat is not just beef, it's actually pork. I hate to tell you, it's not the other white meat. Pork is actually a red meat, the way we break it down, lamb, things of that nature. We actually break that down into a chemical called a nitrosamine. Now, what's a nitrosamine? A nitrosamine is basically a procarcinogen, which means that if you take enough of it and you lay it on tissue, cancer can grow, okay? So that is something that is huge. Also, it can cause constipation. So what does constipation really have to do with colorectal cancer? We're going to jump down to where we talk about diet, a diet that's low in fruits and vegetables. Okay, I always tell people, and doctors will always tell you, eat your fruits and vegetables because we need fiber. Why is fiber important? Well, I'll tell you, fiber is something that's not actually absorbed in the body. The number one job of the colon, okay, when I ask this question, typically, I say, what's the number one job of the colon? People say to make poop. That is not the job of the colon, everybody. The job of the colon is to actually reabsorb water so that the body can get the water it needs, but then it's to hold whatever water it can, and that's what fiber's for, to actually help you have a soft bowel movement so that you can get the toxins out of your body as soon as possible. So what I tell people all the time is, I don't care if you eat red meat that's grass-fed, that is organic, that is this, that, and the other, there's still toxins in it, and the way we break it down is still into a procarcinogen. And so anytime you eat anything, from the time you put it in your mouth to the time you masticate it, it goes down your esophagus, it goes to your stomach. The stomach's job is to grind up the food. That's what acid is for. All absorption takes place in the small intestine. It goes from the duodenum to the jejunum to the ileum, then it gets to the colon. From the time waste gets to the colon, you want it out as soon as possible. From the colon goes to the rectum until a socially appropriate time to empty the waste out of your body. You want that time to be about between 24 to 36 hours, okay? So when I tell patients, and I use this pun on purpose, here's a quick and dirty way to tell what your colonic transit time is. And it's actually a proxy for that because it tells you your whole transit time is that if everybody leaves this talk, goes out and eat a plate of beets, from the time you eat the plate of beets to the time you're able to look at the toilet and worry that you need to call a doctor like me because you think you're bleeding, but that's actually the dye from the beets, that will be your overall transit time. And you want that to be about 24 to 30 hours. And that's a quick way you can kind of tell if your body is working optimally. So the point of fruits and vegetables is actually the fiber content. So when I talk about fiber, a lot of times, and I was guilty of this too, and now that I'm getting older, I use it all the time, but everybody thinks of Metamucil and Citracil. But, I tell men, and especially one of my subspecialties are males and females who are really young who get colorectal cancer. But I tell patients that blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, okay? Those are like God's fruits, okay? They're all God's fruits, but these are like the best, okay? In terms of fiber, they have about 7 to 8 grams of fiber per cup. I take 2 cups of the berries. I take almond milk, which is only 40 calories a cup. I throw a little protein powder in there and ice, and I blend that. And every day, that's my breakfast. I walk out of the house with 14 grams of fiber. You need about 25 to 30 a day, and the rest you can get from eating healthy. And the bottom line is the reason this is important, once again, is that the fiber helps to hold water in the colon to help you evacuate quicker. That's why fiber is important. There's more and more data, however, that the berries that I'm talking about have phytonutrients in them that help actually prevent cancer. And those are data, that's some of the research that we're doing currently. I'm going to spend a little time on obesity, so we'll get there. Something else that's very important, vitamin D levels, okay? Another reason African Americans have a higher rate of colorectal cancer in this country, than other places is that we have lower vitamin D levels. So vitamin D is very important. Vitamin D is basically made when we go out into the sun hits our skin and it sets off a chemical process where vitamin D is generated. So because a lot of us aren't spending time in the sun, and actually we have to spend more time in the sun because of melanin for it to get converted. So we have a lot lower levels of vitamin D. So everybody can go to Costco or go whatever store you want, and they make vitamin D gummies. Vitamin D is important for your immune system to help you actually fight cancer of all types, okay? Now, something that is incredibly important that we do a poor job of, okay, and especially for things that we are embarrassed about. Now, most of you, or a lot of you on the Zoom know my father. He's on the board of this organization, but knowing your family history is important. And my father and my mother always shared their medical history with me. I'll tell you a really quick story. My father has a history of colon polyps. And he told me years ago that, you know, this was in our history. Because he told me that, I'm a colorectal surgeon. I preach about prevention all the time. African Americans were supposed to get colonoscopies at age 45, and now they dropped it for everybody. Everybody should get a colonoscopy at age 45. Because I knew my father's history, I got one at 42. Now, the reason I actually practice everything I'm preaching now is because during my colonoscopy, found a 2-centimeter precancerous polyp that would have been a cancer if I would have waited to 45. Now, I can make a joke about how hard it was for me to do my own colonoscopy and remove the polyp, but I have skills. I didn't really do my own colonoscopy, you guys, but what I'm telling you is that you have to make sure that you get it done. It's very, very important. But knowing that family history, I spoke at Reverend Gerald's church, and when I usually give a talk directed at colorectal cancer, I make everybody say the words colon, rectum, anus. I say you shouldn't die from fear. You shouldn't die from embarrassment. You guys, we don't talk about our family history. I see patients every day, and I make everybody who comes in, I don't care if you come to see me for a hemorrhoid, I don't care if you come to see me for constipation, you fill out a document about, does your family have polyps? Is there uterine cancer, different kind of cancers? 9 times out of 10, a lot of my older African-American patients will say, you know, stomach cancer. And I'm like, stomach cancer, but it's not stomach cancer, it's abdominal cancer. People aren't sure because we don't talk about it. And that's changing. I hate to say we, because I hate to generalize. Most people who are on this Zoom probably talk about it because you wouldn't be here if you didn't care about health anyway. But I meant in general. This is something that we have to share with our families. My kids are so sick of colon polyps and hearing about polyps and knowing that they have to get a colonoscopy at age 35, but guess what? They're gonna do it. So when we talk about obesity, you guys, I had to pick one topic because if we could solve this, we would fix so many things, okay? Obesity is the epidemic / pandemic of our lifetime. World Health Organization has just labeled it as such, okay? Taking COVID, did you know that the chance of you dying from COVID exponentially increases? It's the single highest predictor of death from COVID, obesity. Did you know that obesity makes you more likely to get a multitude of cancers, colon cancer, endometrial cancer, breast cancer, all these things, okay? This is huge. Now, as a people, we already know that 1 out of 3 African-American men will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. I'm sorry, 1 out of 2 African-American men will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. 1 out of 3 African-American women will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime, okay? A lot of these cancers have to do with obesity. 1/3 of the US population is obese. 2/3 of the US population is either overweight or obese. Here's the scariest thing. This is not just a problem for 40-year-olds and up. 75% of millennials will not be overweight, but will be obese by the age of 40. Okay, this is a huge problem. Now, it's really hard because when I go out and give these talks, you know, when I was a kid, it was actually cheaper to go home and cook a meal for your kids that was not only more nutritious, but actually filled you up. But now it is really hard because it is actually cheaper to go eat some garbage from a fast food restaurant. You know, it's hard. You work all day, you pick your kids up, your kids smell I won't say anything in case anybody has any ties to any restaurants, but you smell the food on the way home, you see the signs. Your kids are saying, I'm hungry. You can get a meal for like $4, $3 that they will get filled up from, but that will do damage to them long term. So how do you fight this? There's so many ways, and you know, I have a lot of thoughts on that we'll share in another talk, but there's different ways to do that. But I say all of that to say is that I understand how hard it is. And I know how hard it is for patients to actually do this because stopping smoking, losing weight are the 2 most difficult things, but it's a team approach. The way we lose weight in my house is we don't buy snacks in my house. So my kids, you know, if you see my kids eating fire hot Cheetos, they got it from somebody else, you know, things of that nature, because I can't have it in the house. But it's a team approach. It's a team approach. And so here are the definitions of obesity. I'll share these slides so you guys can get it when you need it. But basically, it's your BMI. There's a million BMI calculators. And, you know, some are off depending on how much muscle mass you have, but it's a good start to know where you are. And I want you guys to really look at this slide, okay? I want you to look at all of these medical problems there. Something, even skin infections, okay? Obesity is a major player in all of these. So why is obesity, let's just take cancer. Why does actually being obese cause you to get cancer, okay? Or why does it contribute to you getting cancer? So when you're obese, obesity is an inflammatory state. Your body is in a constant state of inflammation. Visceral fat takes up space where there is no oxygen. When there's no oxygen, you get superoxides that develop, which can then cause cancer by causing genetic defects, okay? Genetic issues. Okay, so obesity, having that fat actually can cause cancer and contribute to other issues. It's an inflammatory state. Okay, so this is why it is even something from arthritis to skin infections, it can play a role in that. And so what I start telling people is that every little bit helps in terms of things you can do. Now, I am not a soda drinker, okay? I drink water. However, you know, it's hard for people who drink a can of soda a day to just go cold turkey. But if you went from a can of regular soda a day, which typically used to have about 130 calories, now the average soda has about 199 calories, if you switch to diet, you would save 15 pounds a year. If you ate a candy bar every single day and you stopped, that's 26 pounds a year. If you had skim milk over a cup of whole milk, now I'm lactose intolerant, so it's never a problem for me. I'm an advocate for almond milk because it literally is 30 calories per cup. But anyway, one thing I really like is this 1 tablespoon of mustard instead of mayo, that can save you 9 pounds a year. If you cut out ice cream, 33 pounds. If you apple juice, and I'm not a juice advocate, but looking at 8-ounce apple juice versus a usual beverage, a soda beverage, that's about 12 pounds. Now, I'm so happy that our next guest, who's a mental health professional, is coming up because, listen, everything I'm telling you are things that I suffered with in terms of, I lost 40 pounds about 6 years ago. And I'm an emotional eater, like most of us. If I had a good day today, a patient's like, Doc, you helped me, you made my day. I drive home and I say, I deserve a 2-piece. I smell it while I was getting on the freeway and I'm saying, I deserve that. And if I had a bad day, I would say, you know what would make me feel better? The 2-piece, because it would remind me of my grandmother, remind me of my mother, all these things. And I tell you that because I've been there. But the thing that makes me feel better than anything is being healthy for my children. And that is something that I think is really, really important in terms of thinking of a higher calling than yourself and what will immediately satisfy you. And now in terms of life extenders, okay, regular physical activity. If you could get out and even walk, if you're not a walker, but you don't really do that often, if you can get out and just start walking a couple blocks and do that 2 to 3 times a day, that can help you. Bicycle riding, things of that nature. And if you have bad knees and bad legs, sometimes you can get these little, there's these little seated bicycles that is, at least it keeps you moving. That's really the key, is to keep moving. Or just say, you know what I'm going to do today is that I'm going to stand up and watch TV. Even if you can do that, stand up desks are something that are really, really good. When you eat plenty of fruits and vegetables, the smoothie that I was talking to you guys about really is a way I trick my kids into getting a lot of fiber. Because if I just say eat fiber doesn't even sound good. Fiber, right? There's nothing sexy about the word fiber, but it's finding creative ways to get these kind of foods. Now, something that happens with us is, what I've noticed is, a lot of times I would send patients to, after I do surgery on them, send them to a nutritionist. There's not a lot of us doing nutrition. So my patients would go, they'd listen. I happen to like hummus, but somebody just drops hummus on you and you've never had hummus and you're a 60-year-old person, it may not be something you just are apt to try right away. So a lot of my patients would go, they go to the nutritionist and then they wouldn't come back. Luckily, I found Black nutritionists now who can actually work with you on any kind of food you want and you like, and actually just make it healthier. That's the goal. The goal is not to change anybody, that's to make you healthier. Limiting high-fat foods and especially red meat. So listen, this is of ultimate importance. I tell patients that every little bit helps. So if you're a red meat eater every single day and you go to once a week, that can help you. I eat red meat once every couple of months, okay? Now in the summer, I do like a little rib every once in a while. That's the honest to God's truth, okay? But I save it for the summer. If somebody offers me something random in January, I'm saving it for the summer. My point is, I keep it real, but you have to also understand it is something that can make a tangible difference. And it's hard because red meat is cheap. I mean, ground chuck is inexpensive, okay? But it's inexpensive for a reason, all right? It is not good for us. Processed foods is something else that is huge in terms of limiting that. I make the joke about my kids and the fire hot Cheetos, but I do a talk for kids about that particular food because, you know, it makes me sad when I see kids walking around licking that little red dust off their fingers. Because if you look at a Cheeto, it is literally the ultimate processed food. If I ask you to raise your hand right now, is a Cheeto a corn or a potato? It's a lab experiment. All right, exactly, right. So it's not just red meat, it's processed foods. And in a lot of these countries, Uganda, in Nigeria, you know, they eat a lot of spices, the curcumin, they eat a lot of fiber. When I was in Uganda, I had meat once. We went to a restaurant, and what I learned is fresh meat, like really fresh meat, is not that good. It's really the salt and every preservatives that we actually like. I didn't eat meat for the 2 weeks I was there, and I didn't miss it. And I wasn't hungry or any of those things. And my system was working to full optimization. Vitamin D, you guys, Costco has vitamin D now. We take vitamin D gummies. And another little side note about vitamin D, which is very interesting. Vitamin D is one of the, low vitamin D levels is one of the #1 causes of childhood depression. So kids who feel a little depressed and things of that nature, low vitamin D levels contribute to that. So that is a big epidemic. I recommend everybody taking vitamin D. Limiting alcohol, as you know, is incredibly important. Alcohol basically is an immunosuppressant. A little red wine, everybody likes to say, well, doc, you're a colorectal surgeon. How about red wine? Yeah, glass is good. Slow down on the bottle. Okay. This is everything in moderation. All right. Now, something else that's super important. And to me, this last thing is second important to what I'm going to talk about when one more slide now, and I'll get off, Gerald. I see you giving me the sign right now. Discussing health issues with your family. You guys, colon rectal health, for example, is a perfect time to talk about at the dinner table. My dad hates it when I say the word rectum at the dinner table. It is the perfect time to talk about it because that's when we're putting things in our mouth, you guys. It is important. Some of these problems, another thing that's very important, uterine cancer, cervical cancer, HPV checks, things of that nature are very important to talk about. You know, I talk to my daughters, for instance, because they're becoming upon that age where they need the HPV shot. I have family members call me and say, well, does my son need it? Well, yes, because you know, HPV is so prevalent. For example, 100% of women will come in contact with HPV in their sexual lifetime. Where do you think they get that contact from? Men. It's all around us. These are the issues that we all need to talk about because it affects all of us. And if it doesn't affect you now, it will affect you later. And you don't want to be saying, why didn't I didn't know that my mom had this. I didn't know my sister had this. I would have gotten checked earlier. I tell people that colorectal cancer, HPV, all these things are the only 2 cancers that are prevented by the screening, you guys. Getting our health screening is of ultimate importance. Now, this is the last thing I want to say real briefly. We need to be prepared for our doctor's appointments, and we need to have family medicine doctors who we trust and trust us. I'm not saying that your family medicine doctor, if you're Black, has to be Black, but what I am saying is that there has to be this trust factor. They've done multiple studies now that African-American males, they've done studies where they're rich African-Americans versus rich whites, middle, poor, and still find out that rich African-American males, along with all of us, are offered colonoscopies and receive colonoscopies less than their white counterparts, okay? Why is that, right? Why is that? You assume if it's money that you have the same doctors, you're in the same stratosphere. Part of that reason is comfort with the doctor. If a patient tells me, up until Chadwick Boseman passed away, God rest his soul, I used to have to women used to bring me their husbands and boyfriends, and I would have to convince them to get a colonoscopy. I would say, you need it. I would tell them then that if they got it and I found a polyp, then their kids could get one sooner. And that would be the way that they got it. Most of the time, if a doctor who's not comfortable with you, if you say, I don't want that, they'll say, never mind then. And they'll write it on the chart that says, hey, I asked, they didn't want it. So I cannot tell you, and there's many studies that show this in terms of how important it is to be in a good relationship with your PMD. I'm a surgeon, I could be a jerk, okay? You don't need me. You need me for a finite amount of time, but that primary care doctor is really your lifeline, no matter how much money you have. And I always tell patients, even if you don't have questions, you go in there with a blank sheet of paper, you open that paper up and you sit down because the doctor will sit down with you. So I know that's a lot of information, and I really hope you guys take from this about being your own healthcare advocate, which means working with your doctor, finding somebody you trust, And as I always say, I cannot love you more than you love yourself. And so you have to show that you love yourself by being prepared and doing, and us together coming up with a plan that will help you live longer and your family live longer. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Dr. Morrell. If you have questions for Dr. Morrell, you can submit them in the chat. We'll be having a Q&A at the conclusion of Dr. Morrell's presentation. Our next presenter is Dr. Gloria Moreau, Director of Behavioral Health for Unicare Community Health Center, and is one of the nation's leading clinical psychologists, and also serves as a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant. Dr. Gloria has served her community for many years through clinical services, workshops, and trainings, and psych educational classes to help equip mental health professionals, individuals, and families to be free from the mental barriers that prevent them from living their best lives. Dr. Gloria is a highly sought after speaker, author, playwright, and film writer. She has appeared, frequently on CNN, MSNBC, NBC4, and Fox 11 News. Dr. Gloria has authored several books, and she recently wrote and published 2 ebooks entitled Unleash the Secret Weapons of Your Success and COVID-19, Maintaining Positive Emotions During Tough Times. Dr. Gloria is the host of her own talk show entitled A Brand New Me with Dr. Gloria that airs on Thursdays at 11 a.m. our time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Daily Motion. Please visit A Brand New Me with Dr. RG, with DRG, I should say, .com for more information. Welcome, Dr. Gloria Moreau.
Thank you so much for having me, Mr. Reverend Smith and Mr. Lawson. Thank you again, Dr. Morrell, for just providing some wonderful information for us to stay healthy. And so I'm going to share with this group, and I want to thank all of the presenters who have shared about these upcoming events that we all should participate in, because knowledge is certainly power. And so I want to thank you for sharing little tidbits about what we're going to have in store for us by coming to visit with you. I'm going to talk about mental health today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can go into this little short time that we'll have together. I definitely agree with what Dr. Morrell said about the relationship between money and health. And I'd like to start by saying money and mental health are certainly connected. Poor mental health means managing money is more difficult. But worrying about money makes my mental health worse. So it is so important for us to have good mental health. Number one, when we have good mental health, it definitely will help us to acquire wealth, to keep wealth, and then to leave us a legacy wealth, because we'll engage in positive thinking. You know, sometimes people will not become wealthy because they don't believe they will. And so it's important to have positive thinking about how you can move from where you are right now to a greater place. And then making good decisions. When you think back, if any of us thinks back to those times that we made poor decisions as it related to our spending and our acquiring wealth, or even just decisions about helping other people sometimes, that has caused us to have problems. But when you have good mental health, you can make better decisions. Good mental health helps us to stop self-medicating. We don't need another pair of shoes. You know, I love red bottom shoes, but I can't always have red bottom shoes. So we have to think about that, because we like to feel good by spending money sometimes. And we'll spend money, we'll rush and write that check, and then we'll cry all the way home from the store because we know we don't have the money to cover that check. That's self-medicating. And so good mental health also gives us hope for the future, allows us to maintain and enjoy our wealth, and then it helps us to help others, because if you're doing well, then you're going to help other people. And it also prevents us from having to spend wealth to repair our health, because if you don't take care of your mental health, you're going to be sick, mind, body, and spirit. So the impact of poor mental health on wealth building happens because of unaddressed mental health issues. And unfortunately, in our community, we do suffer from depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance use, and all kinds of mental disorders. And when we have these issues, it can prevent us from building wealth. And then communities will prosper when the mental health needs of community members are met. So if you don't take care of yourselves, it's going to make you more at risk of being homeless, being impoverished, lacking in employment, safety, and even participating in the local economy. And we know that it's important for us to think about our social environment, and the effects of health on us can lead to inequitable health care, malnutrition, depression, anxiety, all those things that Dr. Morell talked to us about. And then social problems when we're dealing with racism, sexism, poverty, all of those different things that we're dealing with, as well as gambling, prostitution, all kinds of things that happen societally that can lead us to deal with mental health challenges. So here are some mental barriers. I love this quote by Tin Ron that says, human beings have the remarkable ability to turn nothing into something. And we sure know that in our community. They can turn weeds into gardens and pennies into fortunes. But you've got to have good mental health to do that. You've got to be able to think good in order to do that. So here's what gets in our way. Sometimes we wealth bash. You know, we'll hear of people who have acquired wealth and we'll talk about them negatively. You know, we'll say awful things about people who are moving forward in their lives. Sometimes we don't want to contribute. If you don't contribute, my daddy used to say, nothing from nothing leaves nothing. And if you don't start contributing, you're going to see that as a serious mental barrier to your wealth. Generational despair. I want to go to imposter syndrome. You know, sometimes we don't think we deserve to be wealthy or happy or be in the room or be in the space. We see ourselves as a fraud because societal issues have taught us that, especially for the African American community. How many of us have had to work harder just to get where we are, or to believe we've had to work harder to get it? So if we are dealing with those things, it will affect our mental health. And then toxic family traditions. Some of us have toxic family traditions that are preventing us from having good mental health as well as wealth. Because if we have learned that you spend everything that you have right now because tomorrow isn't promised, then you're not going to be able to move forward in your wealth and even in your mental health. So if we're going to build mental wealth, we have to do some things. And I want to just kind of share what this slide is saying. We have to connect. And sometimes the people we're connecting with are the wrong people. In fact, I will just encourage you right now to take your cell phone out and look through your Rolodex in your cell phone. And there are some people you need to delete, because those people are dream snatchers. Those people, when you talk to them, I don't care how happy you are, how excited you are about life and about moving forward, some of those folks will tell you negative things that will stop you from moving forward. So you've got to connect with the right people. You've got to be active. You know, being actively engaged. I always tell my patients, I will only work as hard as you're willing to work. I will not do your work for you. I will not. And the moment I see that I'm working harder than you, then it's time for termination. So you've got to be actively involved. I always tell folks that one of the things that's important, that you have to participate in your own healing. And so when we do that, when we are actively engaged, we will see things change. You have to be a giver. You know, sometimes we don't have because we don't give. And if you've got issues from your past, you have trauma and unresolved issues, sometimes you won't give. You won't even give of yourself. You won't believe in yourself enough to give. You've got to keep learning, and you've got to take notice of what's going on. When we think about mental health, it's based on 5 things. the quality of our home, school, workplace, and neighborhood environments. We've got to create healthy spaces for ourselves. Oh, you may not live in a house. You may live in an apartment. You may even live in a room, but that space should be the most peaceful and pleasant and beautiful space that you've ever seen in your whole life, because that is going to contribute to your good mental health. You know, sometimes we talk about signs and symptoms of depression and anxiety and PTSD and all those different disorders, but we fail to say, if you are a person who has clothes all over your floor, clothes all over your desk, clothes and food and plates all in your room, that's suggesting that your mental health is not good. Now, you may throw your clothes around a day and maybe not get around to it to the next day to clean them up. But if you can live like that for days and days and days and days, that's saying something about your mental health. So we've got to make sure that our environment is right. The experiences we have and what we learn throughout our lives is so important. Okay, so you've been through some stuff. Most of us have. You've had some trauma, you've had some disappointments, maybe some abandonment, maybe some things have happened. But you've got to look at those experiences as life lessons that you can take to help you, then to help other people. And then our attitudes, our beliefs, and values are important. Our biological makeup and the efforts we make to build our mental wealth are so important. You've got to participate, as I was saying earlier. And then you must invest some time and effort to build that mental health if you're going to be healthy. And I want to just give you a couple of resources as I close. You know, therapy is something that is kind of taboo in our community. We're getting better, but let me just tell you this. We don't want to go seek help for our mental health because we think that means we're crazy. Well, let me just tell you this. If you're suffering from mental health issues and you won't get help, you then are crazy. And not only are you going to be crazy, you're driving other people crazy because you won't get the help you need. If you want to be wealthy, if you want to enjoy that wealth, because we know that there are people who are wealthy who jump off bridges. So we know that money alone and wealth alone does not make people happy and satisfied. So if you really want to be healthy, you may want to seek the help of a trained mental health professional. And because this workshop today has been focused on wealth, there are financial therapists who are able to take both the mental health and the financial and combine them together. The point is, seek help from a trained mental health professional so that you can stop suffering in silence, you can stop spending money recklessly, and you can have hope for a greater future. You may be that first person in your family to get your family into a place of wealth. But if you don't believe you can do it because of your mental health issues, then it will never happen. Right now with COVID-19, with our pandemics, I think we have 4 major ones. You know, COVID-19, we have economic pandemic that's rampant right now. We also have political chaos, and we have racial injustice that is definitely affecting everybody. So it is so good for us to get help so that we can go through this life in a greater way and we can have everything that God has intended for us to have. And I just believe that. I believe that we are supposed to have the best of everything. But if you don't believe it, it will never happen. We have to move outside of our own toxic thinking in order to see something greater than we've ever had. Barbara Streisand says it like this: in order to get something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done. So if you need to move forward, it's going to require you to possibly do some things you've never done before. So thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity, and you all continue in your journey.
Thank you, Dr. Gloria Moreau, and thank you, Dr. Zuri Moreau, for your wonderful presentations. And hello, everyone. My name is Jacinda Moten, and I am the virtual producer of tonight's event. We will now begin the Q&A portion of the program. Please use the chat feature to submit your questions, which is on the bottom of your screen. Now, the focus tonight is on wellness. However, if you do have a question about past or upcoming presentations, feel free to submit those questions. And if we don't get to your question tonight, you have the option to go to laul.org/BWARD, where you'll find contact information to reach our speakers and other professionals who can answer your questions or provide further consultation. So here is one question. How do I find a Black nutritionist?
Oh, so, it's interesting. I have a woman who I'll put my email in the I'll put my email in the chat, or my website. If you go to la:/rectalsurgeon.com, there's a email tab, and then if you email me, I can send you her information. And it's sad that it's her. It's one person, and she told me she used to be the head of there used to be a Black nutritionist organization, and she said that there's barely any left. So, I was very happy when I found her. She found me, and she's worked with about maybe 10 of my patients and has done a great job. So she's fantastic.
Nice, nice. And I see another question from Yvonne Owens. How do we change some of our toxic family traditions? Dr. Moreau?
Well, you start new ones. And you have to be careful, because sometimes these traditions have begun by older members of your family, and you want to be respectful to your seniors and your family. Change is not easy. And so you want to kind of ease in some new ways to help your family to do things differently. And I see that even in my family, we have this wonderful parents, but they did things a certain way, and some of that was toxic. And so in order for us to move in my family, we decided to make some changes and celebrated what they did. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think that's what's wrong. There's a disconnect between our senior community and our, younger folks. So let's try to honor what we can honor from what they've taught us. I will never go a day without being grateful to my parents and what they gave to me in my life. And most of all, they gave me a lot of love. So I'm able to love because of that. So I am looking forward to bringing my family and my grandchildren and great-grandchildren into a greater place by creating some new traditions that are healthy.
And we have another question from Sylvie B. Do you know of any free mental health resources in the Willowbrook area?
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send over my email address, and would you please email me, and I will assist you as best I can in that area. I'm a little handicapped because I'm out in the Inland Empire. I live in Riverside County, so I'm not real familiar with that area, but I can help you to find some help. So I'll put my email address.
Jacinda, this is Reverend Gerald. I have a resource in the Willowbrook area, and I will, if you get that person, if that person leaves their email, I'll make sure she gets it.
Okay, yes, Sylvie, leave your email in the chat and we will address that for you. Okay, and another question is, Dr. Morel, how do we avoid emotional eating?
First of all, you have to understand that that's what it is. Sometimes people are not dealing with what's making them eat, or what's eating them. And so you've got to look at, and sometimes that requires some help from a trained professional to get there. But look at those triggers when you are starting to eat. Like Dr. Morel said, if he had a good success story that called for one type of food, and then if he was disappointed in something, then that calls for something else. But he had awareness of that. So let's pay attention, be mindful. I practice mindfulness because I try to stay present with myself, to understand myself. And I can tell when I am feeling a certain way and what I feel like eating or what I feel like doing. And so it's important for you to be aware of yourself and be truthful with yourself, and then be willing to seek help when you need it. There's nothing wrong with that. And I just want to say this to our community really quickly. You know, we should need to talk to somebody with everything we've experienced in our lifetime. And you've got to make sure, though, you talk to someone who understands your worldview. There are people that may even look like you that may not understand your worldview. So don't think just because you're talking to an African American that they understand your situation or your culture. So make sure that you interview them, just like Dr. Morrell said about bringing questions to your consultation. Bring questions for a therapist so that you can get the right person to help you.
And I think the time to see a therapist or a life coach is now for anybody. I mean, you never know. I had, you know, it will make your life, even if you go there just for a happiness evaluation, it helped decide, you know, help me decide what was really important. You know, a lot of times we all get caught up in chasing whatever we think the ring is. And then you finally get there. And if that's all you have, you're never going to be satisfied with that. Like, you'll get there and then you realize, you're like, what else do I need to chase? And then you realize that you really, you know, you got to chase on family relationships. You got to, you know, make sure you're doing right by your kids, things of that nature. And I think therapy is great for everybody. And it's, you know, it's funny. I find that if I phrase it to patients as, you know, life coach or something, it's therapy, but it is something that for so long we have, I think a lot of us have poo-pooed, and I think it's made all the difference in my life.
Yes.
Definitely.
And one other thing is about the emotional eating. What I find is that if I still want to do that, I'll call my wife, and I can't be in a drive-through and talking to my wife at the same time. That never goes well. So I'll drive on past and just keep talking to her.
We have another question. Dr. Morrell, does a change in the appearance of your stools always indicate colon cancer?
No, so there's a multitude. Okay, that's a great question. So there's a multitude of reasons that can happen. The number one reason that the stools are certain colors is because of bile pigments. Okay, so there was even a craze when they had a special kind of 7-Eleven Slurpee. It was like a midnight purple Slurpee where people would have fluorescent stool. Like, that was there, and people were coming to the hospital and all kinds of things, because that's how related what we eat is to our stool. Now, what you need to worry about is changes in bowel habits or the change of consistency over a long-term period. So if you're somebody who goes like clockwork every single day, that's how you've been, and you start going once every 3 days and it's difficult and that lasts longer than a month, you try your over-the-counter, you know, Miralax and things of that nature, then you need to go see a doctor. And when you go see the doctor, you need to leave with not only what the doctor is recommending, but if this does not work, then what are we going to do? So a lot of times we'll go and, you know, a lot of us will say, oh, we went to the doctor and, well, what happened? Well, we tried it, but nothing ever got better. So it's incumbent on both of us. It's incumbent on me, but technically it's more incumbent on you as a patient. It's your life to not only leave saying, if this doesn't work, what will happen, and have another appointment. Well, doc, I want to talk in a month, whether it's phone, whether it's virtual. The one thing about COVID now is everybody's doing virtual appointments. We need to talk again, because you need to not only know how it's going to be fixed, but the plan if it doesn't. I try to tell all my patients, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And if this doesn't work, then we may have to do this procedure, but that's number one. So number two is blood mixed in stool. So if you have blood that's actually mixed in your stool, that is automatically a colonoscopy. I don't care if you're 20, I don't care if you're 80, okay? When you have blood mixed in your stool, there's a chance that the blood is coming from higher up. It does not mean cancer, but it could be diverticulosis. It could be inflammatory bowel disease. It could be some kind of infection, but that means a colonoscopy. Blood on top of the stool, that could be hemorrhoids. Somebody asked me in the chat about hemorrhoids. That could be hemorrhoids. That could be a lot of other things called outlet bleeding. It could still also be cancer, but any change that you see, if it lasts longer than a month and you've tried remedies from the store and all that, you need to see a specialist or you need to see a doctor. And then if you're not getting your answers at that point, then you need to see a specialist.
Definitely. Another attendee asks, Dr. Morrell, what are your daily breakfast tips?
So what I do for breakfast really are the smoothie, and it's going to be on my website. I sent my website, I think, to everybody, and you'll be able to email me there also. But really, you know, blackberries and raspberries are really my big breakfast staples, meaning that I usually take a cup of each, and then a cup of almond milk and a cup of ice, and I use a protein powder, but you don't have to, and I blend it and I drink it. Not juice it, I actually put it in a blender and I drink that. And what's really neat about berries is that even if you're diabetic, because the glycemic index is so high, because there's so much fiber in it, that you can still tolerate that. You can still safely consume that. And that's if you actually make that, that's a pretty nice volume. So I usually just drink that and I'm good till in the afternoon or till dinner. My wife, who's incredibly healthy, she's like an intermittent faster. So she doesn't eat until 11 and her breakfast is oatmeal and some berries, but I'm a huge proponent of, I like to say that the first time is the best time. And so breakfast for me is it's the only time I hate to say this and especially from Dr. Moreau, I'm always in control of what I can eat, but I am actually the one who's actually in control of making what I can eat and knowing the nutritional value. And I have that time in the morning. So that's when I try to get it all in terms of the fiber and all that good stuff.
Definitely. And we have another question from Yvonne. This is for you, Dr. Moreau. She's sentimental and she finds a hard time getting rid of clutter. What steps can she take to help her?
Well, I think there's a fine line between, just kind of holding on sentimentally to things and hoarding. And so I think we do have to have a checkup when there are problems with me giving up something that's causing disruption in my ability to move in my house. Like I'm gathering a lot of different things. Now, I think all of us can say that we have things that we're sentimental about, that we have had throughout our history or that have been with us a long time. But when that becomes a hazard in your being able to get around your house or move around, then that's suggesting that there's something else going on and you really want to deal with that. It's just good to get a checkup. As Dr. Morrell was saying, going to see a therapist, or you can call them a life coach or whatever, there is a difference though between a therapist and a life coach.
Yes.
So, if you're dealing with clutter or possibly doing some hoarding, you want to see a therapist, because you want to get to the bottom of that. You want to understand why you're doing it so that you can create some strategies for changing those behaviors. And so thank you for sharing your own story with us.
Definitely. Here's another great question for you, Dr. Morrell. What are the best foods to eat regularly to keep your colon happy and working regularly?
Okay, so the best foods typically, once again, are high fiber foods. So things such as, prunes, believe it or not, a lot of us, I used to hear prunes and think of my grandmother immediately. If you haven't had them lately, they're fantastic. But prunes, kiwi fruit, mango, they've actually just published a study. It was interesting. When you tell patients to try fiber, they looked at like Metamucil and found that was tolerated, but people kept forgetting about doing it and they had higher gas when they did it. When people did it from kiwi fruit and berries and prunes, they actually had less gas and they were happier, and they actually went through with it. A diet, so protein, the best thing is fish and chicken. Okay, beef every once in a while, as we talked, is not going to hurt you every once in a while. But beans, things of that nature. It's really neat. I'm a big proponent of turmeric, and especially from Uganda and Nigeria, curcumin. So we've noticed that there's a lot of studies that say that it's not just, when you look at observational studies, it's the fact that, is it the diet? Is it the fact that they're physically fit? Is it the fact that there's no obesity and no family history? But it actually looks like some of the things in the food, such as curcumin, create a milieu and changes your something that's called microbiome. You guys are gonna be hearing a lot about that. It's basically all the bacteria that make up our bodies. And I'm a big probiotic believer. I used to work with a probiotic company. I do not work with it anymore, but I still take that particular probiotic because I know it works. I can tell you guys that if your probiotics are not in the fridge, they are garbage. Don't waste your money. Okay, probiotics are live bacteria that you're supposed to take. They can only stay live if they're still kept in the fridge. And the whole thought behind it is that when we're starting to realize that when you have colon cancer, for instance, patients with colon cancer have a certain type of bacteria in their colon. Now, we don't know that if you have a higher type of that, you will get cancer, but we do know that we find a higher type of that bacteria in people with colorectal cancer. So probiotics are supposed to replenish what your body naturally has. So things in like a Nigerian diet, the curcumin is something that can kill bad bacteria, we think, in the body. And that's one of the reasons that we think they have less colorectal cancer than other people. So something else that is nutritionally related, when you look at Japanese culture, so in Japan, they have gastric cancer, they have stomach cancer. They will pull people over and do EGDs. They have such a health system where if you don't have your scope, your endoscopy, you will get a card in the mail, and then some health officials will show up at your door, and you will get that to make sure you don't get gastric cancer. When Japanese people move here, first generation, like their kids born here, they don't get gastric cancer. They get the same cancers we get in America. So there they eat a lot of nitrates and a lot of the fish and a lot of the food that is canned. Here, we don't have those kind of nitrates. And so a lot of this is all diet related. You can look at areas that are becoming more and more developed, like areas in India. India also has a very low rate of breast cancer, colon cancer, et cetera. However, they have a different obesity problem there. The people with money are obese, and they're getting higher rates of cancer because they're eating more McDonald's, they're eating more fast food. You can actually look at curves in these areas with no cancer and look at the number of processed food establishments that they start to build, and you see your cancer rate actually goes up. So it literally, and even with, I tell people with weight loss, with being healthy, 80% is diet. So if you never worked out, but you were obese, but you changed your diet, you can get to 80% of where you needed to be just by diet alone. And so to me, it's a very powerful concept. It's hard, but it's very powerful. And I think you really need that team approach. You really need that team approach. You need to, if my dad is trying to lose weight, I'm not going to bring over, some bad fatty food just because I'm hungry and going to sit there and offer it to him. We're going to do this together. You know what I'm saying? It has to be a team approach, I think.
Hey, I have a question, and I'm thoroughly enjoying this presentation. And Dr. Zuri Morel, your father's a dear friend of mine, but I want to talk about COVID for a moment because I think it's important. A larger percentage of African Americans in this country are reluctant. So Dr. Morel, can you speak to the consequences of not getting the COVID shot from a medical perspective? Yes. And Dr. Gloria, if you can speak to how do we overcome the barriers that prevent us from getting the shot? I think they're two different things. They operate in two different places, but they're peninsula to each other. How do we overcome the fears, the doubt, the reluctance, that we live based on historical realities? And if you can speak to both of those issues. And before you do, I just want to say that I'm the president and CEO of the Rewirement Project, which is life coach, which is financial coach. And what I will do is make sure I get my information. And I'm so happy you brought that distinction, Dr. Gloria, because dealing with the behavioral issues associated with finance is so different than the practicality, but they're intertwined. And it's an area that I bring expertise to. So I'm so happy that there's an emergence. I've recognized that you spoke to that. But what really is important for us in this country is COVID. There's a medical and there's a mental, and I'd like for both of you to speak to those two.
Okay. So in terms of COVID, everybody, as somebody who, they shut down at my hospital. I'm affiliated with Cedars-Sinai, elective surgeries. And we were all in there dealing with people who some people were young with no medical history. Some people had a lot of other medical problems. As I mentioned earlier, obesity was the #1 predictor of whether or not you're going to die from COVID. We have to not getting that shot is going to make you, it's almost to me going to be like you're not going to be able to almost live without it, because enough people are not going to get it to get rid of it unless everybody gets the vaccine. And what I mean by that means that, we hear about herd immunity and 75 to 80% of people have to get it for it to work. That is true, #1. But #2 is now we have all these variants. And even if you get the COVID shot, at least you're less susceptible to dying from one of these variants. And I always tell my patients, I've had to talk to them, but I said, I understand Tuskegee experiment. I understand all the things we went through, but I also say, I want to be in the line where the rich white man is in. Okay. So that to me is the #1 issue, is that and I'll be honest with you, if they said, hey, we have a special shot for African-Americans and Latinos, I would say, hold on. I try to also explain to us that the reason that this happened so quickly is that it was an opportunity meeting funding, which meant that we were working on a vaccine for RSV. RSV is a virus that children get. My daughter got it. We were working on that. We had all the technology for that. That failed, but we still had that technology sitting around. And then when COVID hit, we had a large infusion of money to use to work on these, on some data that we already kind of knew. That's why we were able to get this done so fast. Okay. So I try to explain it to people like that this isn't something that's just been, rushed through irresponsibly. And the number one benefit is that, if you want to hug your parents, if you want to interact with your loved ones again and have a meaningful, we're humans. If you have meaningful contact with people, this is something that needs to be done. It's not a hoax. It works really well. There's issues with any kind of vaccine, but I can tell you this, even so far, the numbers being low, historically, it's still less side effects than with a flu shot. And I'm a huge flu shot proponent. And so I think when you explain to people that it's not just, the technology was already there, it was just needing the opportunity. That's what the money was. And so it was made in a safe way. That's number one. But number two is that it is extremely irresponsible to be around your family, your grandparents, your parents, and not have that, because you can be putting them at risk. And I always tell young people, I've seen young people who are 22 years old, lean, happy, normal people, dead. They're dead. And so that's really the consequence. I mean, the consequence is basically, it's still life or death. We think it's over, but it's not over. We still have people who are in the hospital and not doing well. And even if you don't die from COVID, one other thing, I'm sorry, Mr. Brown, then I'll let you talk, Dr. Morrow. One other thing is the long-term sequelae. And she'll tell you this, there's a huge percentage of people who get COVID who are cured from COVID who have mental issues, like within the first 3 months, depression. They need to see mental health professionals. And then we have these people who are long-termers, and it's like they're intelligent as you, Mr. Brown. They were working like you were, and now they're almost not Alzheimer's, but they are a lot slower. And so this is something where I don't even want to get. At first we thought, well, maybe it's like catching a cold. I don't want it. I don't want it and be a survivor. I don't want it, and I don't want to die from it. So this is something that definitely I recommend. I go to Latino neighborhoods, I go to Black neighborhoods, I go to Asian neighborhoods and tell them we really need to get it. But when all else fails, I tell them that when you got rich Caucasians coming down from wherever, coming to our neighborhood because they're able to navigate the system to get the vaccine, why do you think that this particular vaccine is going to hurt you when they want it? If they didn't want it, that'd be a different conversation. I hate to break it down like that, but sometimes I have to in order to get people to get the shot.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. That is such a wonderful question. And I have to deal with this question all the time. And so, of course, it is normal for our community to be fearful of any type of governmental initiative based on our history. So I first want to acknowledge that. So if that's where people are coming from, I acknowledge it. But I always ask them, what are we afraid of? Well, if you say you're afraid of this, vaccine killing you, well, so will COVID. And so there's a greater chance that you may survive it with this vaccine than you not having the vaccine. So again, it's about education. It's about people like me and you that have taken the vaccine to share our stories with. I got on Facebook as soon as I did my vaccine, I got on Facebook and I shared it with everybody to let them know that I did it. So we have to help our community to come along. It shouldn't be that way, but hey, societally, people have not trusted our system. It's one of the reasons why with psychotropic medications, we have not had good clinical trials with communities of color because of the distrust for the system, so they haven't participated. So when you give a Black person an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication, sometimes it doesn't work well because they've never been normed for those drugs. So again, we've got to take the chance of erring on the side of caution, taking the vaccine. But I'll say this, before you do, talk to your medical doctor. That might make you feel a little bit better. If you talk to your doctor and kind of ask, are you a good candidate for the vaccine? That might help relieve you a little bit more. So just do what you need to do to feel better.
And can I add one more thing, is that what's really important, I tell patients, is that a Black woman for the Pfizer vaccine was instrumental in developing it, number one. Mm-hmm. And number two is that this is one of the first clinical trials, and this is what reminded me, Dr. Morrow, thank you, that us as a population, I think we're 13% of the nation. They had 11% African-American participation. It's the highest rate of African-American participation in any clinical trial ever for any drug.
Right.
And we had it this high for this. So this is as good as it hopefully, I mean, not as good as it's going to get, but this is as good as it's ever been in terms of having us represented in the trial. So that is huge. That's huge.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for that wonderful question. And thank you, Dr. Gloria Moreau and Mr. Zuri Morel for your wonderful insight.
Yes.
We will now be concluding the Q&A portion, and I will turn it over to Mr. Reverend Gerald.
Thank all of you, Dr. Morel, Dr. Moreau, for your participation tonight. That was great. And thank all of you for submitting those questions. And those of you who didn't get your questions answered, there should be contact information for Dr. Moreau and Dr. Morel on the chat by now. And if not, if you go to laual.org/BWARP, there'll be a space where you can submit those questions, and we'll make sure you get answers to those questions. But this whole event tonight was done because April, I should say, is National Minority Health Month. And I love the question that came up about COVID-19, but because COVID-19, as you know, is a pandemic that's disproportionately impacting the racial and ethnic minority communities and underserved in our nation. COVID-19 vaccination is an important tool to help us get back together with our families and communities, our schools, workplaces, and preventing the spread. The National Institute of Minority Health and Health Disparities has joined with federal agencies to focus on empowering communities to get the facts, and their campaign is #VaccineReady. And as the speakers mentioned, there's conspiracies, there's things that they've done to us in the past that have people hesitant to get this vaccine. So I started today's comments with a what if. I got another what if for you. What if the conspiracy, what if this information that you're getting about this vaccine is to instill fear in the Black community so we will continue to die disproportionately from COVID like we do with all the other diseases more than the general population? What if they're using a little reverse psychology on it, telling you not to take it? So when everybody else is doing well and cured of COVID, we'll still have a high rate of it. The other thing that we discussed tonight that's kind of near and dear to me is mental illness. I believe that our nation's biggest problem is mental illness. Yes, racism remains an issue. Homelessness is out of control, but mental illness fuels both of those situations. And our government's failure to provide programs and resources to our community and our hesitancy to accept and address the problems that we have with mental illness exacerbates the situation in our community. So somebody asked about mental health resources. One of them is NAMI, the National Association of Mental Illness, Urban LA, which was started by B.B. Moore Campbell, and they're located right in Leimert Park. So you can go to NAMI, N-A-M-I, urbanla.org and reach out to them, and they'll be able to direct you to mental health services and resources. Their executive director is Harold Turner, and the president of their board is Madeline Cobb Brown. And for those of you who don't have health insurance yet and are still struggling to pay for health insurance, there's an entity in our community called Crenshaw Health Partners, and they will be able to provide you with all the covered California opportunities that are there. They have a special program that just came out for people who are 65 and over. They're located in the Baldwin Hills Mall, and you can get a safe appointment there, or you can go to CrenshawHealthPartners.org for that information. So with that, I want to thank all of you for spending your evening with BWARP. We'll look forward to your feedback, so please return the surveys that you will receive. Our next workshop will be on June 10th, a foundation built on home and business ownership, which features Daryl Brown, Senior VP of US Bank retired, and David Murphy, real estate, mortgage, and tax specialists. They will explain to you how to prepare yourself to purchase, sustain, and grow the real estate and business assets that can result in your financial liberation just in time for Juneteenth. So remember, go to laual.org/BWARP or parkside.org if you have some questions that haven't been answered this evening. We look forward to seeing you on Juneteenth. Be blessed, stay safe, and tell a friend about BWARC.